Hi guys, and welcome to yet another tutorial by Eric on Learn Max. And tonight, the scary thing is we're not going to be using Max. What would cause us to abandon Max? Well, we're going to look at an open source, public domain alternative to Max. Unfortunately, it doesn't work inside Live the way that Max for Live works, and it doesn't quite have all the bells and whistles that are built into Max, but it is a relatively near relative of Max. It was written by Miller Puckett, who was also one of the fathers of Max. And you can get PD at the Pure Data, PD stands for puredata.info site. And you can learn all about the history of it and the history of Max as well, how it started off at Earcom, all that kind of great stuff. So go there, get your download your copy for your operating system. You can get it for Windows, you can get it for Linux, you can get it for the Mac, and try some things out. And I'm going to split the tutorial up here, so I'm going to join you back in a second. We're going to look at how to get things working alongside of Ableton with PD. Now I'm over here in Ableton, and you can see my auto filter moving around on its own accord here. And if you look over here, this is my PD patcher window, which is going to look very similar to the typical Max patcher window that you've seen. It doesn't quite have all the bells and whistles and cool GUI objects and all that kind of thing, but a lot of the functionality, if you're just out to learn, really the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, how to do the math and stuff inside of Max or PD, this is a great place to do it. Okay, so you got some things going on. Let me turn these guys off so that you'll see them. They're not moving up and down now. And I'll also start a little music in the background, and I'm going to fade that in and out for you as things kind of go on so you can see what's going on. Okay, so let me turn this first one on, and you'll see it is modulating both my envelope amount and my frequency. Now, how do I do that? Now, first off, everything is controlled, or the Ableton is controlled through a virtual MIDI port. I use the IAC bus virtual MIDI port drivers here on the Mac, and you'd use MIDI yoke if you were on Windows. Check out one of the other tutorials if you want to find specifics on those two guys. I'm not going to kind of join those up in here. So anyway, the two talk to each other over a virtual MIDI port. So I use a controller, see this CTL out, also similar to what you might see in Max. That sends a MIDI controller out, a continuous controller out to Ableton. And then in Ableton, I just use my MIDI mapping. Like you'll see here, I have controller 1 on channel 1 mapped to both my envelope and my frequency, and controller 4 on channel 1 controlling my resonance there. So I turn that off. And you can see it go up and down again. All right, so I'm going to be kind of quick here, hopefully. So what happens, I have a slider controlling the frequency of my oscillator. I divide that goes from between 0 and 127. I divide that by 100 to give me the, around 1 hertz and below range I want for my LFO. That phaser is then used, so I can sync it. I have this button here, I can restart the phaser. And I use this cycle to just create an LFO that's a sine wave according to the frequency that's the phaser, everything's set through here. I take a snapshot of the value according to this metronome that goes off every 50 milliseconds, and that becomes just then a control signal as opposed to an audio signal. I have this just as a little feedback device so I can see what it's doing. I take the absolute value of my audio signal, because that goes from -1 to 1. I want it to go from 0 to 1. I don't have negative control values, so I have to use this abs value. So it goes 0, 1, 0, 1, and back and forth, along the way, not just 0 and 1, but all values in between. Okay, that feeds out this little bit over here. And what this is doing is that it allows me to set a low and high value for the range. So you see, as I'm changing stuff over here, the range is going to change. So I can make it, bigger and smaller. So there I can have some, kind of fine tune that. And the way I do that is I take, the higher value, I subtract the lower value. That gives me the range. I divide it by 100 since I'm dealing in percentages here. All my controller values, in this case, go from 0 to 1. So I get that range, which is, in this case, like 0.44 to 0.63, and then I multiply that by my modulating amount, and then I add the 0.44 back in. That's what's going on here. 44 divided by 100, that becomes 0.44, and I add that, so that's my base. So my lower value is 0.44. So it's going to modulate between 0.44 and 0.63. I then multiply that by 127 to get the whole MIDI controller range, and then I send it out my MIDI controller. That's all there is to it. And then modulate things up and down. That's all you need to do. So you can imagine, knock yourself out, do all kinds of crazy stuff here in Pure Data, and try a lot of these, kind of modulation, automatic modulation stuff. Design your own modulating, not synths, but controllers, basically virtual MIDI controllers that you can use to automate all sorts of stuff in Live or any other application for that matter. So give it a try, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss out all these steps. And you also want to subscribe so you can get to all my other tutorials and learn all the other widgets and big bits and pieces. So again, this is Eric at Learn Max, and hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Take care. Have a good night.